Hello, and welcome to Career STEM Chats. In this episode, you'll be hearing a chat between our host, Sarah Cardozo Duncan, and Dr. Holly Soutter. With a career spanning more than 2 decades, Holly has witnessed and helped shape the evolution of modern drug discovery. From the early days at the lab bench to today's rapidly advancing world of AI integration, her journey reflects the transformation of an entire industry. Moving from academia into industry, Holly has continually reinvented her role, shifting from generating primary experimental data to leading and managing full drug discovery portfolios. Today, her work sits at one of the most exciting frontiers in science, the intersection of applied AI and drug discovery. Holly understands that the future of the field won't be driven by one discipline alone, but a powerful synergy between rigorous experimental science and machine learning. Here's our interview with Dr. Holly Soutter.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be a guest on the podcast. I really appreciate it, Holly.
Oh, happy to do it.
Well,
Thank you
considering
for
everything.
inviting me. This is a great honor.
Oh, thank you. So, as I said to you, what we're looking at in this podcast is really your career. Where did it start? Right? Where were you trained even? Then where did it start? What were the transitions you made?
Mm-hmm.
What were the skills and expertise that you learned in one job to bring you to the next?
Okay.
Right? And what were the things that made you successful in those jobs? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. So I will say that my overarching vision for my career was always to be in a role that was really involved in getting drugs to patients. And so as I thought about the technical skills that I wanted to build and the roles that I would have in different organizations, it was always centered around that.
Oh, and
And
why? I mean, that's really very focused at a very
so,
at a very early time in your career.
yeah, a lot of people don't kind of figure that out until they're training and maybe have had a couple jobs. So when I was in high school, the AIDS crisis was in full swing. And I was seeing the impact that this horrible virus was having on communities, and mostly communities of, you know, people who have been disenfranchised, if you will. And I always had an interest in science and was thinking, should I go to med school? Should I go to grad school? What do I actually want to do? And really it was, I want to be able to discover medicines that could save people's lives, help people treat disease, relieve human suffering. And that was very clear to me even before I started as an undergrad, is that, how I did that wasn't clear to me. I just was like, but this is what basically I want to do. And as I progressed through undergrad to graduate school, postdoc, it began to be refined more, like how I could do that. Um, so
And
after,
could you just, give a little bit of a summary of what that journey was and what the refinement became?
absolutely. So going from undergrad to graduate school, I was reading an article in a scientific journal about this new field of structure-based drug design, where you would use these different techniques to understand how a drug molecule interacted with its target, and then you could use that to help develop, a better drug. And in order, one of the technical skill sets underlying all of that was structural biology. And so when I was looking at graduate programs, I was looking for a structural biology lab. And that's how I ended up landing in the lab of Bill Royer at UMass Medical School. Now, he wasn't doing drug design, structure-based drug design, but I learned the basic techniques for determining crystal structures of proteins and complex with different ligands. And then my first postdoc was in industry. So applying those technical skills that I gained in graduate school to structure-based drug design. A good sense of it was a beginning sense of like, how does a drug discovery project work? What are the different pieces that are involved? How are people making decisions? Like all of those things that seem so amorphous when you're a graduate student, like you don't even know. It's like this black box of drug discovery, right? So I began to understand the process, how I fit into the process, how you were working with scientists across different disciplines, how it really was a team sport, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed working in multidisciplinary teams and learning about different types of scientists, right? So I'm coming at it from the perspective of a structural biologist, but obviously a big part of this is medicinal chemistry, cell biology. You had experts in a particular disease area that were there. And all of these people, were seasoned scientists, and I learned a lot from all of them. And, it was, people were so open to teaching me, because I didn't understand their discipline. They would be so great about talking to me and helping me learn more about what they did. Um, and so, I got this refined sense of the drug discovery process, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to work in industry or perhaps an academic career was better for me. I just didn't know. But the decision I made was to take a second postdoc in academia. I was
Ah,
using, yeah. So I my first postdoc was at AbbVie. At the time, it was called BASF, and then it was purchased by Abbott, and then it became AbbVie. So my first postdoc was in industry. Then I did a second postdoc in academia, again applying the skills of structure-based drug design. And one of the projects I worked on was a project focused on developing new HIV protease inhibitors. So it was like a dream come true for me, because this is what inspired me to become a scientist, right?
I'm getting goosebumps. That's
So
awesome.
like, yeah, it was an amazing opportunity. And so the project was structured kind of similarly to how a drug discovery project within industry would be structured. The lab I worked in was the structural biology core of that program project. And so there were other labs that were doing virology, doing computational work, doing protein production. And we were all working together with the goal of developing this next generation of HIV protease inhibitors. And that was using a chemistry screening technique that came out of Barry Sharpless's lab called click chemistry. Um, And, that time in academia, I mean, it's worse now than it was then, but it wasn't great then. And I saw the pressure that my PI was under to publish and get grants, and it just seemed like a grind. And I thought, I would have this weight on me of like, if I don't get these grants and I don't publish, then all these trainees are going to lose their funding. And yes, the project I was on was very translational, but other projects were more basic scientific research. And that wasn't really what appealed to me. So I decided I would go back into industry. Um, I got a job at Pfizer and working in their structural biology group and working on projects in different, what they call therapeutic areas. So oncology, neurodegenerative, antibacterials. So I sat in on a lot of different project teams. So not only did I get additional exposure to how project teams in industry work, but also how project teams in different therapeutic areas work. And on top of that, because Pfizer is a global organization, it's like the actual like early stage research and discovery is one small piece of a very large process of what it takes to, you know, if you find a compelling drug target to you have a marketed drug. So I got this bigger picture view of I'm here, but there's all this stuff before and there's all this stuff after. And that was a really great experience to get that bigger picture. Um, but I felt very siloed. I was an early career scientist. I wanted to grow in my skills and expertise. But in pharma, they essentially have like groups that specialize in a particular thing. So I was in the structural biology group. They're like, just solve structures. That's your job. Just keep you doing that. And I was like, but what about this other thing? And they're like, no,
I
focus. And I'm like,
focus. I want something new.
yeah, like give me that structure. And I'm like, oh God. So I thought, if I'm really going to be able to do that, to grow as a scientist and do different things and bring different tools to bear on the drug discovery process, I'm probably going to have to go into biotech because just by virtue of, resources, right? You have a smaller budget, you have fewer people, people have to wear many different hats, right? So they don't have the ability to have specialists. You have to be able to do different things so that as the science evolves, you can pivot and go in a different direction. And so I joined a biotech company called XChem, and they have a platform where they generate these ultra large small molecule libraries. And so they generate these ultra large small molecule libraries, screen them against drug targets. And then my role involved taking those molecules that were identified out of those screens and showing that they bind to the target, they inhibit the target. Even better would be they inhibit in a cell-based assay. And so I got, a lot more technical expertise in doing that. And I got exposure to a lot of different therapeutic areas because we were working with external partners that were in, doing all sorts of things, inflammation, cardiovascular, like um, and across different companies. So we had a large partnership with AstraZeneca, but we also had partnerships with other pharmas. So I also got exposure to Pfizer does it this way, AstraZeneca does it this way, and EMD Serono does it this way. Um, and so that was really valuable. And the business model at XChem, like I said, was we get these targets, we screen these targets, we find hits, and then we would present what we found out of the screen to our external partner, and they would evaluate those molecules and say, yes, we will license those molecules, or no, we're not interested anymore, or not interested in those particular molecules. And I felt a little limited. I really wanted to be involved beyond that. Like, okay, now we have this hit. What do we do? Like, how do we optimize it? How do we get it from hit to lead into lead up? And so I found another job at a different biotech that is more like a traditional biotech, in that they had like some very focused programs that they wanted to get to the clinic. So the goal was to take a program, find some hits, progress them through, IND, sort of investigational new drug applications, and then into phase one. So in that opportunity, I got to not only drive a program all the way to the clinic, but I got the opportunity to build a group. So I came in as a group leader. I built up a team of structural biologists, protein scientists, biophysicists that were supporting these programs. Um, and so
And
that
did
was a
you,
great experience, just to hire people and see how they work together. So sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, how was that? Because that's, the science is the science, right? People are the hardest thing to manage in science because the
Oh
science.
dear God, yeah.
Oh, what did you learn from that experience?
Oh, so much, so much. So, it was a lot of trial and error. It was an experiment. Like, okay, I heard this person, it's a lot about, how their personalities, their communication preference, how the styles of communication, how they collaborate. Um, I think one of the fundamental things about running a group is making sure communication is happening between individuals. It's so striking to me how often a problem can be solved by just getting the right people in the room and talking through things, right? So I would have someone come in and, express frustration that, so and so was not delivering on the time frame they expected, or the data wasn't high quality, or whatever, their issue was. And so just bringing those people in and saying, okay, let's talk through this, and making sure that you're hearing both sides. Don't form preconceived, I know it's hard, don't form preconceived notions about what has happened, and what the solution will be, because there's a lot of exploration that you need to do in that conversation about what's underneath all of this. So my advice to people managers is, really keep an eye on communication. I always saw my job as a manager or group leader as making sure that the people in my group had what they needed to do their jobs. Whether that was, time, equipment, information. Um,
And they knew they could come into you or have a conversation with you and say, I'm having difficulty. I'm having difficulty with an individual, or I'm having difficulty here. And you weren't judging, you were helping, right?
yeah, exactly.
You were solving the problem.
I've always been very solution focused. And so if I have someone come to me and say, an example from the group that I managed previously to this position was, I ran this screen, there was an automation malfunction, and as a result, we had to rerun half the, half the plates that we, had planned to run. Um, and rather than saying, oh, how could you let this happen? It was, okay, this is what happened. How do we fix it? I'm fine if you bring me a problem, but I want you to come with a proposed solution. It doesn't have to be the solution, but just say, this is how I think we can fix this and make sure that this doesn't happen again. Um, I think that, that really sets the tone of, I know what I'm, for the person coming to me is like, you know what you're doing, you know what went wrong, and you have an idea of how to fix it, because I'm not going to be an automation expert like that. I'm relying on my automation lab head to tell me these things. Um, so yeah, being solutions focused and not blaming. Yeah, I don't find that to be particularly productive, like berating people and blaming them. I don't find that to be useful.
No, it's not useful, because then you're leading in fear instead of leading in collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like people do their best work when they feel safe,
Yes.
that they're not, if they make a mistake, there's going to be this huge blow up, and they may lose their job. I mean, we all make mistakes,
Yes.
and research is hard. And
It's
this is
hard.
not for the faint of heart. Like, most of what you do is not going to work. You just
Right.
have to keep trying, you know? You just, I used to get like so down on myself if some experiment failed, and I would go in. I had this amazing postdoctoral advisor. This is my postdoc when I was in academia, Dave Stout. And I would go into his office and I'd be like, oh, Dave, I did this, it didn't work. I tried that, it didn't work. And he's like, you know what? Well, now we know that doesn't work. So we'll just figure out what else to try. He didn't blame me, he didn't shame me. He just said, okay, well, now we know that doesn't work. And I felt like that's the mindset you need to have. Like,
The perfect mindset.
yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of science is eliminating the things that don't work. You have a hypothesis, You come up with some initial experiments to test that hypothesis. If those don't get you the data you need, then you have to be able to come up with a new approach. I mean, that's just the phenotype of person that you need to be a scientist, a successful scientist. That sort of resilience, the ability to move on quickly from failure and to learn from your mistakes. That's the most important thing, is to learn.
Well, my late dad, may he rest in peace, used to say to me, Sarah, there's a reason they still put erasers on the end of pencils.
I love that.
Isn't that a
Yeah,
great
there's
one?
a backspace, on the keyboard.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, what it sort of is of interest is, because you've been industry, academia, and now back in industry, right? And you had two postdocs, one in industry, one in academia. So you're really well versed. Give me the differences, right? So you left like very big industry, biotech kinds of jobs, pharma jobs, and you went to the Broad Institute. Why?
Why would you do that? Such a crazy thing. So,
I
so,
think the Broad Institute is one of the best places on the planet,
oh yeah, yeah.
right? I think it's just one of the most extraordinary institutes in the world. However, it's back in academia, a little biotechy academia, but nonetheless academic.
Well, the center that I worked in, the Center for the Development of Therapeutics, was a drug discovery organization within the Broad. So the core of what I was doing was the same as the role was the same as it was in industry. It was just the environment in which I was operating. And the benefit of that environment, or one of the great things about that particular environment, is I was so close to the emerging science, right? So we had academic partners that would make these amazing discoveries around disease biology, and we would work with them to help translate that into a drug discovery project. So they were our biology experts, and we were the drug discovery experts, and we worked together to create this, drug discovery process. And a lot of the Broad scientists are savvy about that. Like you said, it was a very biotechy environment, and many of the Broad, lab heads, PIs had spun out companies already, right? So they knew a lot about this process, but others, had no idea to how to go about this. Um, but honestly, they were some of the best collaborators because they were so excited about the prospect of translating what they had discovered into something that could help people. Like that just, they were just so like, oh, I didn't even know if this was possible. And that was so motivating to them. And I totally got that. Like, yeah, that is, one of the first projects that I worked on in industry went to the clinic, and we had a big celebration. Um, the whole company came together to celebrate, and they showed us videos of some of the clinical trial participants talking about what an impact this drug made on their lives. And that was like, at that point I was hooked. I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. You can't get better than this. This is it. And so for those Broad PIs, that excitement, like I totally related to that you could actually make this into something that would help patients. So yes, it was academia, but in many ways it was also very similar to what I was doing in my other roles in biotech. So, but in a
And
very special place.
a very special place. And did you think that because of your industry experience, you brought more value?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I said, they didn't even know how to, many of them, the younger investigators didn't know how to even go about this. So we were very much the bringing that expertise, right? So the CDOT is a group of professional drug discovery scientists. So many of the scientists in CDOT are from a pharma biotech background, and they are very much relying on our expertise to help them navigate that process through, okay, this is an interesting new drug target. How do we explore it? Is it really the target we want to go after in this particular pathway? Is it druggable? If we drug it, what do we want to do to it? Do we want to, inhibit it, activate it, change its subcellular compartmentalization? I mean, there's all these different ways you can modulate a target. So helping them think through that. And then, okay, we have bought in on this target. We know that we feel confident it's druggable. We know how we want to drug it. Now, what do? We build assays, we do screening, and then once we have identified hits, we have to optimize those hits. And that's really the whole process that we're guiding them through and providing actual support. So I ran a group that had, assay development, screening, supporting, routine assays as molecules were being optimized, looking at the activity of molecules in cells. So, we had the infrastructure and technical expertise, and we brought the broad scientists through along with us. And I think there was, because of that very tight interaction that was, evolving over time, like I said, we were getting access to the emerging science. So as they're doing experiments and they're learning more, we learn more, and maybe we have to pivot the drug discovery approach based on what is discovered in their lab. And we're seeing these results years before they will ever be in a paper, right? So we're way ahead of the game when it comes to, working on these targets.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Such exciting work. Like
Yes.
your whole career, I mean, I find it fascinating, right? Because you came to this very early. You have been singularly focused since that HIV AIDS epidemic, right? And you're
Right.
still as excited, it seems to me, as you were the day you started.
Yeah, I love what I do.
Yeah.
I love what I do. And and when you love what you do and who you're working with, it's like that's the best combination, right? Like and it's so important to have that intrinsic motivation to get you through those tough times and to have people around you that are going to support you through those tough times and are creative and solutions focused. And we help each other, because again, drug discovery is a team sport. So yeah, I think, you spend more time at work than you do anywhere else. So you should find something that really excites you, because if it's not what you want to do, it's going to be pretty miserable.
Well, I think it's going to be, certainly my experience has been with people has been the science has to be in place, is always what I say. Like the science has to be exciting and new for a scientist to move there. However, if the culture is not your values, you will fail. And people don't get that, right? They just go for the science and they don't consider the whole picture. And so you
Yes.
seem to have considered the whole picture and have had a very successful career and will continue to do so. If you were to advise this young group, right, the new PhDs that are coming out that are in different science, right, than when you were training, right, because science has evolved just to a point where it's just, blows your mind kind of thing. What would be your advice to them coming out of their PhD?
So what I have observed, so I have conversations with early career scientists, exactly, if I want to go into industry, what should I do now? And oftentimes I find they're very focused on the technical skills, and which makes sense because that's been their world for those 4, 6, whatever years that they've been a trainee, a graduate student. But you have to think, when I'm looking at somebody coming out of academia as a potential hire coming into industry, it's really getting the sense that they know how to break down a problem into discrete steps, come up with hypotheses, an experimental plan. When things go awry, can they, pivot and find a new approach? It's more about the mindset of a scientist. Do you have the mindset of a scientist? And are you resilient enough to weather through those setbacks? I think another big difference between academia and industry is you're working with people that are in different scientific disciplines. And sometimes there's a misperception, and I absolutely had this misperception, which is I have to be an expert in all these other things. No, you bring your expertise to the table, but then there's a medicinal chemist sitting next to you, and that's their expertise. And you have an in vivo pharmacologist down the table. So you don't have to be an expertise or expert in every discipline, but you fill a piece of that puzzle, excuse me. Another piece of advice I would give them is, you're not getting any kind of training in soft skills.
Yeah.
You're just focused on research. You need to get some ability to demonstrate that you can collaborate with other scientists effectively, that you can communicate what you're doing, what you have done to people outside of your area of expertise. That's super important for working in industry. And that you can operate in these multidisciplinary environments. And, a lot of those sorts of skills I got from participating in groups that were outside of my institution or not research oriented within my institution. So when I was a postdoc at Scripps, we had this network for women in science, and we organized events, and we, ran different programs. And that gave me some of those soft skill, you know, techniques that I needed, as well as there was an organization that was outside of Scripps called the Association for Women in Science, which you are very familiar with. And they had a large chapter in San Diego. And, I sat on multiple committees. I helped organize meetings and events, and all of those skills are important to have in industry. So being able to see a bigger picture and bring things together, even just like being able to run an effective meeting, like a lot of
Right?
people don't do that.
They do
So
very well. They
no,
don't
they,
do it very well.
like, why
So,
are we in this room? What are we trying to accomplish? What's
oh,
the agenda?
what's
Basics.
the agenda? What is the agenda?
What's
Right?
the agenda? What are we trying to achieve in this meeting?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
So
and
I
did you
think,
want to talk about the next steps? Like, because I think it's interesting because you've always had jobs, right? And so you landed a job in record time. Do you feel comfortable talking about that at this point, or is it too soon?
yeah. So it's a really tough job market right now. And I've never seen anything like this in biotech pharma. It used to be the case that, if you wanted to move, you could find a position within a month or two and move. But, there are massive layoffs going on. There are much fewer biotechs spinning up because of this dearth in VC investment. Um, so it was a very different process this time and was much tougher. But at the same time, it gave me some time and space to think about do I want to go into a role that is similar to what I was doing at the Broad, or do I maybe want to take the skills that I've acquired and apply them in a new way? So I was very like, I just kept a very open mind. And if somebody messaged me on LinkedIn or emailed me and said, "Do you want to chat?" And I'd be like, "Absolutely, let's talk." And that's actually how I found the job that I ended up. And it wasn't a role that I would have considered under normal circumstances. If it were different times, I would have found a role very similar to what I was doing at the Broad, maybe higher title, higher salary, but the day to day very similar. But this is applying all my accumulated knowledge to building these new computational tools that will enable biotech and pharma companies to accelerate drugs to the clinic and to patients. So it's not something I would have even thought I could, like, it's helping me grow again. I'm pushed outside my comfort zone. But I'm also bringing something of value to the table. I've been in this role for 2 weeks at this point, and I'm already seeing like how I'm bringing something different to the table, right? Like most of the people that
Ah,
I'm working with are data engineers, machine learning scientists, and I'm the sort of drug discovery person that's helping them think, okay, the scientists need this, and they need this because X, Y, and Z. And these are the sorts of, considerations. And then they really start going into like data structures and workflows and pipelines. And that's where I'm like, oh, I'm out. Um, so yeah, and
well, you're
that's
out, but
exciting to
you're
me.
not, you're out, but you're not quite out
No, I'm being a
because
little
of all of
facetious.
because of all of your experience, pipelines, all
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
So
And
you
I
can
need to
go,
make sure that we're always like they don't go off into data science land and forget what we're trying to accomplish,
yeah,
right? Because it's all sure you can develop the most sophisticated machine learning model to do something, but if it's not valuable to the scientist, it doesn't matter,
doesn't matter.
right? So I'm there to help keep everybody focused on that. This is what scientists need. So we need to keep moving in that direction. And the way that this organization approaches the process of building these platforms for people is very much, you know, we always need to be looking back. They call it the North Star. We need to always be looking at that North Star and making sure that what we build is exactly what is going to fit that need for them. And so I'm in a team that's embedded within a large pharma company. So we're kind of right there alongside the scientists that we're trying to build these things for. And, I'm really enjoying it. I'm really,
Oh, it
like,
sounds so exciting. And it sounds like the accumulation of all of your skills and all of
exactly,
your expertise.
exactly,
So
exactly.
we'll have to redo this in in 3 or 4 years and see where you are then.
Yeah. And it's also like, I think I'm at the edge of what drug discovery is going to look like in the next, this is where drug discovery is going, is accelerating the process using computational tools
Yeah,
and and more, specifically machine learning and AI.
yeah, yep. I agree.
So
I agree. I agree. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This has been amazing.
anytime, Sarah.
I think this has been terrific. Just terrific. Thank you so much, Holly.